Welcome, viewers, to the third edition of the Government Accountability Hour on QTV. This show is brought to you by the International Republican Institute, IRI, with funding from the U.S. State Department. I am your host, Omar Bah. Today we will focus our discussion on the Internal Audit Directorate. I have two gentlemen with me in the studio. On my right is Basiru Cham, Senior Internal Auditor, and of course Mamadou Job, Deputy Director General, Internal Audit. Welcome to the studio, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bah.
Yes, thank you so much.
Welcome both, like I said, to the third edition of the Government Accountability Hour on QTV. This program is mainly designed to enlighten the citizenry on the responsibility and accountability of government towards them. How is government accountable to them, and when, of course, does government need to be accountable to them? We will start this discussion, of course, with by looking at the internal audit, the establishment of the internal audit, I don't think there is any better way to start with, apart from, of course, the deputy director at the department. Welcome, Mr. Job. Maybe you take us through the establishment of the internal audit, and then probably we will come back to Mr. Cham if he has anything to add. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bah. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen and viewers outside there. It's a pleasure to join you in this very important program. But first of all, before coming to the question proper, I would just have to express my sincere gratitude to the Director General of Internal Audit, who delegated this assignment to us to come over here, but also express our appreciation to the RII for the role that they are playing in promoting accountability and transparency in the public sector. Is very much recommended, commended. We have been engaging them, not for the first time. We have engaged them in numerous sensitization programs, whereby different stakeholders were invited from top-level management, including the permanent secretaries, even at cabinet-level ministers. We have been engaging them in sensitizing them on the role of internal audit, the functions of internal audit, and vote controllers and other stakeholders, including the CSOs as well. So this is another milestone in that progress that we are very much appreciative of. But to come back to your question, the establishment of the Internal Audit Directorate, it's worth noting that the Directorate of Internal Audit was established through the Public Finance Act 2014. The Public Finance Act 2014 created the birth of the Directorate of Internal Audit. If you go to Part 8, Section 67, which clearly states that there shall be a Directorate of Internal Audit established under the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. So that gives birth of the Directorate of Internal Audit, and that's further elaborated in the Financial Regulation 2016. If you go to the Financial Regulation 2016, also Part 6, Section 41, it's also saying that after the establishment of the Directorate of Internal Audit, the head of the Director of Internal Audit would establish internal audit units in all ministries, departments, and agencies. So this gives the power to the Director General of Internal Audit to establish internal audit units in every ministry of the government of the Gambia, every department of the government of the Gambia, and also every agency of the government of the Gambia. So that's where we derive our mandate from, and that's where when Directorate of Internal Audit was established. But I would definitely like to give a brief historical background of the Directorate itself. Prior to it becoming a Directorate, it was an internal audit unit at the Accountant General Department, and mainly they were focused on pre-voucher auditing. That was their main task. That's what they do. It's in an office at the Accountant General Department, and then conduct pre-voucher auditing. What I mean by pre-voucher auditing basically is reviewing of payment vouchers before they are processed by the Accountant General to establish whether the payment process itself is in compliance with applicable laws, policies, and regulations, and also whether there is value for money. But that has been enhanced and further widened by the creation of the directorate itself. Because once it was created, then we have more muscles and more coverage, wider coverage area and audit universe, rather than when it was only at the Accountant General Department as an internal audit unit. So basically, I can say that it was established, just to cut it short, through the Public Finance Act, Part 8 of Section 67, and also through the Financial Regulations, which is Part 6, Section 41. But also, after the establishment, there were other regulatory frameworks that were created to enhance the establishment of the directorate itself. After that, we have what we call the Internal Audit Charter that was created, also the Internal Audit Manual. We also have what we call the Internal Audit Committee Charter. These are documentary frameworks that are very, very much important in making sure that the directorate is functioning as it is expected to and is fully capacitated. So we are also paying expressing our gratitude to the African Development Bank. I think they have played a very important role in making sure that that unit that was in the Accountant General was converted into a fully fledged directorate. The funding and the sponsorship all come through them, and we are very much grateful of that. The reason why we are here today, we can say, is also partly because of them, but also not forgetting our parent ministry, which is the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. They have been really supportive in the establishment. They have helped the directorate to realize its potential, so that we can add value to the systems, processes, and procedures of operations within the government of the Gambia. So basically, that's how it was established during the year.
Mr. Cham, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, thank you so much, and good evening to the viewers that are watching here. And then our sincere gratitude to the IR for the facilitation of this sensitization. Just to add what Mr. Job has just said, like the internal audit was just a unit at the Accountant General, and then later it was created as a directorate. But just to add a little bit of buttress on the creation of this internal audit, it says that, like, when we mention the director of internal audit, it means that the directorate of the ministry, which is undertaken in the internal audit function, is an independent directorate. When we say directorate of the internal audit, I just want to underline the independent directorate that in the Ministry of Finance, which undertakes the internal audit function of the government, and is not involved in the day-to-day operation of the budget agencies. They are not involved in the day-to-day operation of the budget agencies. It means that we have some functional reporting that we have to do, as he said, that the audit committee that was created, and the audit through the audit charter, the audit committee charter, and whatnot. But when it comes to the history of the directorate, I think Mr. Job has elaborated very clearly on that.
Brilliant. Mr. Job, what role does the Directorate of Audit play in terms of government ministries and, of course, government departments? Because we know auditing is important, especially internal audits. We know, of course, the Auditor General's office will do the general auditing. But what is the importance of the internal audit when it comes to government institutions and departments?
Very, very much important, Mr. Bah, I would say. It's a critical factor of the governance process in any institutional setting that you go to. You cannot underestimate the role of the internal audit. But putting that aside a bit, let me just try to buttress on one point that he has mentioned, which is very, very important, relating to the independence of the directorate. Though DIA was set up through the Public Finance Act on Section 67, Part 8, still now there are issues when it comes to the independence of the directorate. Though we have a functional reporting line to the Internal Audit Committee, which is an independent internal audit committee, and then an administrative reporting line to the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Finance, still now our independence is questioned, because to be a fully independent institution and provide assurance and advisory service effectively and efficiently for the benefit of MDAs, we need to be fully independent. so, which I thought very important to bring into the deliberations here. The role of internal audit to MDS is very, very crucial, very important. But the main role of the Internal Audit Directorate is to ensure that risk management, internal controls, and governance process as designed and operated by management are working effectively and efficiently to add value to the system's operations and procedures. And this to ensure that policies are being adhered to by staff and employees of the institutions. When we say policies and procedures, we mean policies set by government of the Gambia. And one main one is what? The Public Finance Act, the financial regulations, the general orders of the government of the Gambia, the Gambia Public Procurement Authority and Act, and the Gambia Public Procurement Regulations. These are very key instruments that are very important in the public finance management itself. So one of the roles of internal audit to ensure that there is adherence to these policies and procedures by government officials, but also at entity level as well. Another role of the internal audit is to make sure that government resources are spent wisely, efficiently, and properly in the acquiring of what goods and services. We at the Internal Audit Directorate, we ensure that government resources are spent wisely and efficiently in the acquiring of goods and services by using public funds. We also ensure that employees are behaving in a manner prescribed in the general orders and not bringing discredit to the institution or to the government of the Gambia at large. These are just to sum up some of the roles of internal audit. But the main role of internal audit definitely is geared towards adding value to system processes and operations. And the way we do that is through what we call the assurance services and the advisory or consulting services. These are the two services that the Internal Audit Directorate provides, and definitely is aimed at adding value to the system operations to help MDAs achieve both their operational and strategic objectives as designed in their strategic plans as well.
Maybe before coming to Cham, to buttress on that, those who, of course, might have been following events about probably happenings at the internal audit will raise questions about the reported autonomous status granted to the office of the internal audit. What happened to it? Because we understand this was in 2015.
2015, which reported autonomy?
It was reported that the internal audit has been given autonomy. By law. By law,
not actually full autonomy, because that's what we are driving at. That's what we envisage to achieve anyway. Because if you look at our reporting line, functionally we are reporting to the Internal Audit Committee, and then administratively to the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Finance. But to have full autonomy, what internal audit is driving at is we want internal audit to be established through an act of parliament and then become an agency. But right now we cannot say that we are fully autonomous in providing assurance and advisory service, because it's been manifested in some of our engagements. You have an engagement whereby people are still questioning the mandate of internal audit. You'll be upfront and say that you don't have the mandate to audit us. Where do you derive your mandate from? Or you don't have the power to audit us. Or even it comes to an extent of limited access to records, at which auditors should have full accessibility to. There is no one who should limit access to records to auditors. And that's outlined in the financial regulations. It clearly states that auditors should be availed access to all records, information, files to conduct their audit exercises. Still now, we are having some restrictions on that when it comes to our mandate being questioned by some other people. Also, restrictions to some of these is also a challenge. But definitely, there have been improvement. We have to acknowledge that there have been improvement in all those areas. But it's all due to sensitization like this, or whether it's through workshops and seminars or TV programs, talk shows. But definitely, it has been a challenge, but it has been improving gradually. But we are working on, and that's what we envisage to. Our objective is we want Directorate of Internal Audit to be created through an act of parliament, whereby we'll be more autonomous and more independent to carry out and execute our duties properly the way is expected by stakeholders.
Mr. Cham, maybe you will want to buttress on that, especially when it comes to the work of the Directorate in general.
Thank you so much once again, Mr. Bah. Just to highlight something, Mr. Job has skip that one. Maybe he can also come and add something on top of that. I think today, many Gambians, if you say internal auditing and national audit, sometimes they mix it up. Sometimes you will send somebody a letter to go to national internal audit. They will go to Bakau or Kanifing to the National Audit Office. You know, these are two separate institutions in the Gambia that are playing different roles, but important roles as well. You know, when it comes to national audit, these ones, they are the external auditors of the government of the Gambia. They do the audit of the financial statements of the Gambia annually, and to all MDAs, to all budget entities in short. But for us as internal audit, we are there on the ground to make sure that internal controls are effective, and we also want to make sure that the intended objective of a set institution or set organizations are achieved fully. So therefore, internal audit are there serving as internal auditors of the government of the Gambia, of all MDAs. Though he has highlighted that, you know, these people are questioning our mandate, but they are questioning our mandate because they do not read the law. Because like other than the Constitution, when it comes to public financial management, after the Constitution is the PFM, Public Financial Management Act, that supersedes all other acts, and this is the one that drives our mandate. So maybe these are the kind of platform, as he mentioned, to help us to sensitize people, for them to make sure to know that these institutions should have limitless access to information. We should be given the floor however we want it, anytime we want it, and any information that we required in order to do our job effectively and efficiently should be granted to us. So, but we just want people to understand that these two institutions are of different caliber. They are set up differently, though they communicate at some point in order to avoid certain duplication of effort. But they are two separate institutions. Maybe Mr. Job can highlight something on that so that people can also may know from this, so that, you know, we are different in short.
Yeah, and that will of course bring us to the need to buttress on the challenges, and you could do that, and then by connecting the two, so that you better explain to our listeners what is the difference of the two, and basically what challenges do you face at the internal audit?
It's a very important point that he brought up, and I think that misunderstanding still persists when it comes to the difference between the National Audit Office and the Internal Audit Directorate. And as he rightly said, you go out there and people ask you, where do you work? You tell them the internal audit. Oh, I know someone there. Who? Your office is located by the Independent Stadium. And that's not the case. That's the National Audit Office. And the National Audit Office was established by an act of parliament. They are an autonomous, independent audit office of the Gambia. It's headed by the Auditor General, whom we will just say a very good evening to him. He has been very committed to transparency and accountability. But these two offices are two different offices. As I said, the Internal Audit Directorate is a management tool. It's a management tool that's designed to add value, and is there established to ensure that the internal controls, the risk management and governance processes within the institution or within the government of the Gambia are working effectively. If we have our houses in order properly, before the external auditors come to audit the financial statement of the government of the Gambia or any other government institutions, it will have been that internal audit have already cleared the way for them. And it's going to be a very easy and smooth exercise for the national audit. So we act as a liaison department or a liaison officer between the external auditors and the institution that they are auditing, the government of the Gambia here. So therefore, you'll see that the Internal Audit Directorate will be there to make sure that all internal controls are in place and are working effectively. All risk management have been identified, and then they have been addressed properly, and the governance structures are very well also in place. And there is adherence and compliance to the policies, rules, and procedures in effecting any transactions. So the internal auditor is there to make sure that all these things are in place and are working effectively before the external auditor comes and then find them out. Because as a management tool, if we identify all those lapses and then make recommendations to management, once it is implemented, it becomes more easier, especially when the external auditors come to audit the financial statements of the government of the Gambia, and where thereby the internal audit will also act as a liaison and then provide more information if needed be, and make sure that everything works out very well. But definitely there are two different offices, two different functions, although sometimes the functions may overlap, but we are definitely coordinating with the National Audit Office to the extent whereby we'll eliminate all these overlap in functions and activities. What we normally do is when we prepare our annual work plan, we send it to the National Audit Office, and then they will look at the annual work plan and see the areas that we are covering, because we are all constrained by resources in terms of personnel, in terms of funding and all those things. But once we send our annual work plan to them, when they look at it, at least it's give them an information of what areas we are covering and what areas we are not covering, so that they can also design their work plan in such a way. And also we do make follow-ups onto the audit recommendations or findings that they have also made during their audit as well. But it's a clear difference thing. This was established by an act of parliament. We are not established by an act of parliament. They are more independent than us, but we are driving to be established by an act of parliament, like our sister institutions in the regions. If you go to Ghana, the Internal Audit Directorate was established through an act of parliament. You go to Liberia, it's the same thing. You go to Sierra Leone and all those things. And that's where we want to be. We also want to be established through an act of parliament so that we can independently execute our duties as expected.
Brilliant, Mr. Job. That was quite revealing in terms of the work of the internal audit. But moving forward, one will also want to know what is the relationship between the internal audit, of course, and of course the MDAs, let's say ministries and departments and agencies of government. What is the relationship, and if there are any, challenges, what are they?
Of course, there are relationships between the Internal Audit Directorate. In my opening remarks, I said that when you go to the Financial Regulations 2016, Section 41, which clearly says that the head of the internal audit shall establish internal audit units in every ministry, department, and agency. So you've seen the power and mandate given to the head of the internal audit to establish internal audit units in every ministry, department, and agency. So therefore, once you have an office or a unit in any of the ministries, then basically you have a relationship with that ministry. And our relationship is very professional. Professional in the manner that any internal auditor, wherever you are found to be posted, you are there to add value to the system, processes, and operations. But how do you add value on that? By providing assurance and advisory services. And right now, I can tell you, during that rollout process, because as mandated to the Director General of Internal Audit, to roll out and establish internal audit units in every ministry. Through that rollout process, right now, we can happily report that we have covered 100% of every ministry in the government. Every ministry either have a posted internal auditor, or if you do not have a posted or stationed internal auditor, an internal audit function or service is being annexed to you by the nearest posted internal auditor. And the example I can give you there is the Ministry of Justice. We are yet to post an internal auditor there, but the internal auditor posted at the National Assembly is provide coverage of internal audit functions to the Ministry of Justice. Likewise, the Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Petroleum, all those ministries also do not have a posted internal auditor, but nonetheless, they have been provided with fully functional internal audit service, either being annexed to the nearest posted internal auditor or the internal audit function provided through the head office, which is the Directorate of Internal Audit. So the relationship is very professional, although notwithstanding, there is always challenges, and these challenges, we are teething problems in the sense that when they were posted, you will see that, okay, that acceptance by the ministries was very slow, not fast as we expected them to be. So that was a real challenge. But right now, as I said, with sensitization and programs, workshops, and all those things, definitely that has been improved very, very much. Now, even ministries are requesting that we should be posting internal auditors to their ministries. We have a request from the Ministry of Trade not long ago, and we have posted an internal auditor. We have a request from the Minister of Petroleum as well. That was long time ago. Still now we are yet to post an internal auditor, but we are covering them through the internal audit head office. We have other requests as well. But notwithstanding, it doesn't only stop on the ministries, but every department and under any ministry as well is covered. The only part now remaining that we are working on is other agencies as well, because you have to understand that agencies, most of them are established through an act of parliament, and they have their own structures as well. But the Director General Internal Audit is mandated to coordinate all the internal audit activities and functions in all MDS. So agencies are not excluded, but the coordination and collaboration to make sure that every internal audit unit is well equipped technically with the required expertise and skill to run that office, the Director General is mandated to do that. So definitely that's where we are heading to right now, working on to have agencies covered as well. Even though agencies are not covered, but I can also happily report that some of the commissions have been covered. We've seen the establishment of the CRC, Constitutional Review Commission. It was what? Subvented commission. It comes through the Minister of Justice. Every payment made to the CRC was also vetted by the Internal Audit Directorate through the posted internal auditor at National Assembly. Also, you come to the JANE Commission, it was similar thing. Right now, the National Human Rights Commission, they requested for an internal auditor to be posted there, and an internal auditor was posted to the National Human Rights Commission. So this is the aim, this is the objective, to make sure that, because internal audit function is so crucial, so important that you cannot go without it. And it's a lapse in governance when you don't have an internal auditor in your establishment, especially when you talk of public sector. You go to the private sector, many of the private sector banks, they have their established internal audit unit, independently established. Likewise, also, in the public sector, as mandated to the Director General, you will see that we are establishing units in every MDA. We have covered 100% of the ministries and their departments, but we are working on the agencies now.
Coming back to Mr. Cham, of course, on the challenges you might want to buttress, but apart from that, also the issue of how do you hold these people accountable, these ministries and departments?
On the challenges, though we are facing a lot of challenges, including these cultural challenges as well. We said people have different perceptions when it comes to auditing, and it's affecting both internal and external auditing. But one thing I also want to mention is the relations that we have is not only with the MDAs, but also with the LGAs, local government agencies. Now the internal audit unit is now providing a training service, in-house training service for these auditors that are at the local government agencies. You know, these are all done because of the trust that people are now having on the side of internal audit. Now they have put so much trust on the internal audit director of internal audit to be providing these training services for their internal auditors. So most of them came there, they've passed, some are still there undergoing this training. You know, after then they are posted, we expect them to go and add value into their local government agencies. Though the challenge that we have is like, the key challenge that we have is maybe resource, personnel, human resources also, and then also these cultural challenges that we are facing. Definitely, Mr. Job has said most of the challenges that we have that we are going through right now, and definitely we are working towards through this kind of sensitization. Then at least it will help a long way.
Yeah.
I just want to buttress a little bit more on the challenges faced by the internal auditor, because that alone is a discussion of its own. Because it's very important that we highlight these challenges for people to know. Notwithstanding the gains we have achieved, you know, the progress and everything, there are still challenges that we want people shed light on for people to know. And number one challenge is the attrition of staff. Retention of staff. We have high level attrition of staff at the Directorate of Internal Audit. Just for the last couple of years, I can say we have lost 8 key staff who were very well trained staff and who were, you know, at top level within the directorate. We have lost them to the public enterprises. The public enterprises, you know, like JNPC, you know, like Pura, you know, like GAIPA. You know, internal auditing is a service whereby it's in the competitive industry, because it's a service in demand, needed by every institution to meet up with your governance requirements. So internal audit being embedded in the central pay scale or government pay scale, competing with all those public enterprises with and agencies with a better pay, definitely will be losing staff. And the number one challenge there is what? The attrition rate of staff at the Directorate of Internal Audit. That's one thing. Funding is also another thing, because it's a profession that needs what? Continuous professional development and training. So you need to train your internal auditors continuously so that they can acquaint themselves with the, you know, most abreast, up-to-date skills and knowledge on internal auditing, because it's a changing industry. It's an evolving industry. So auditors also need to up their game in the industry as well. Funding is a problem, and that funding can also be attributed to lack of or inadequate pay to staff that leads to their attrition, and also to training as well, but also to mobility, because at certain points, look at the size of Internal Audit Directorate providing coverage to the whole government. You're talking of a whole government, the whole nation, nationwide. You have the sub-treasuries, you have the local government authorities, whereby, as he rightly said, that we are conducting some training to their auditors. But you need funding also to do all those things. And also the acceptance is a challenge, accepting of internal auditors, especially when we are on the first phase of the rollout of internal audit functions to MDAs. The acceptance level was very low, but as we rightly said, that has very well improved right now. And also, other than the acceptance, we have the autonomy, that independence that we are fighting for, so that it can be established through an act of parliament, and then staff will be more remunerated to the point whereby we will not be losing them to the public enterprises. Because as I rightly said, we are in a competitive industry. We train staff, they will become qualified internal auditors, they will become very reliable, but at the end of the day, we cannot retain them because they have a better package outside there and they'll have to go for it. So that's a problem. And we believe that one aspect where that can be resolved or solved is when we become an agency, because when we become an agency, definitely the pay rate will not be part of the integrated intergovernment pay scales, and obviously that will help retain staff. Because we agree that or know that sometimes the movement is not all about the monetary, but in this case, look at the institutions that they are moving to. It's all down to what? The package that they are receiving over here. That. So that autonomy also is a very challenge. And also key challenge, because we say internal audit is all about value addition. But one of the key challenges, and before you can realize that value addition, is by implementing audit recommendations. If you do not implement the recommendations coming from audit exercises, then therefore the value addition will be very minimal. So the value addition will come through listening to the advices of the internal auditors, but also implementing the recommendation that they are coming up in their report. I know at the ministry level, through the public finance management department, they have been doing a lot as well when it comes to public finance management reforms. I think we also have to give them credit to their directorate. But we have set up what we call the Audit Committee. The Audit Committee is the Audit Recommendation Implementation Committee. And this committee is to follow up on the implementation of audit recommendations made by auditors. So you'll see that they'll meet on a quarterly basis, gather all the internal audit reports and all the national audit reports, look at the audit queries, the recommendations that were made, and then tax the individual ministries or departments to their permanent secretary or their representative, and establish the status of implementation of those recommendations, and they will also report on that. So definitely, and also not to forget the internal audit committee, because quarterly we report to our internal audit committee on the audit findings, the observations and the recommendations that we made, and we have seen that they have been taking interest in those recommendations and take it up with management. Time to time they meet the Honorable Minister of Finance and discuss some of the recommendations and see how the ministry can also help in implementing those recommendations. But these are the key challenges that we face as a directorate. And if you have to sum it up, you will say that, okay, it's about the autonomy of the directorate, which is the independent, the funding issue, the mobility issue, the training issue, the retaining of staff, and the implementation of audit recommendations. Definitely is really something that is worrying, but we are working on that, and there have been improvement. Notwithstanding all these challenges, I think it's fair enough to say that there have been improvement in that.
Quite interesting. Of course, it's good that this show is mainly for the citizens, and of course probably government will also listen, and moving forward the citizens also could demand that the internal audit is made totally independent and given all the necessary funding it deserves. Coming back to Mr. Cham, the work of the internal audit, what impact does it have towards citizens, or let's say on citizens?
Yeah, when it comes to internal auditing, I think the most important factor here is when it comes to trust and confidence to governance and accountability of public financial management. As much as internal audit work is being, so if internal audit is given the chance or the capacity to do its work effectively and efficiently, then therefore the citizen can rely heavily on the internal audit to make sure that to the confirmation that proper governance is taking place, they are compliant to regulations, you know, our resource utilization is effective and efficient. So the key here, to me, here is the trust and the confidence that the citizen will have on the government of the Gambia when it comes to public financial management. You know, because as much as internal audit is doing their activity, or you know, all the activity that we are doing, making sure that we add value to the system. If citizens there can rely on the internal auditor being reinforced or being capacitated, therefore definitely the work of the internal audit will have impact on the government of the Gambia. Therefore, that impact will reflect back to the citizens of the country.
That's quite clear. Yeah. Mr. Job, that brings us to the next issue. How do we, of course, improve public engagements with the internal audit?
Yeah, I'll come to that. I just want to buttress more on what he said.
That's fine.
The impact of internal audit on
citizens,
on the citizens,
yeah,
which is very, very much important. And the impact is huge. And I would not just say impact, but positive impact for that matter is very, very huge. You know, we want the citizenry to believe, to have trust and confidence in their system, to have trust and confidence in their public servants. And the internal audit is driving towards that. Because if we can give them assurance that all our established laws, policies, and procedures have been adhered to, people who are found wanting have been reported, and there is transparency and accountability in our actions, our procedures, our policies and systems, then they'll have trust and confidence in the civils, in the public sector. And that's the first message or image that we want to send. Because if the citizens don't have trust and confidence in their own system, then we are at the lowest of level. And that's one of the things that we want to achieve. We want to have a system whereby the citizenry, including you and I, and every other person who is a Gambian and who is a Gambian have confidence and trust in the system. That's one thing. The impact also can be seen in reality. I'll just give you examples of the COVID-19 relief package that was given by the government of the Gambia to the citizens nationwide. The internal audit played a very key role in there. What we did was we said that, okay, we are going to be present on the ground, but also we have to give credit to the committee that said that, okay, I think it's the National Assembly anyway, if I get it right, that said that internal audit has to be present in the contacts committee, but also on the ground for the distribution of this release package. So what we did was we assigned teams, I think 8 teams for that matter, at the McCarthy Square. From the McCarthy Square, the transportation to the distribution points up to the level of what? Distribution those relief packages to the final beneficiaries. So you see the differences, because that's an assurance that we want to make sure that everything goes well as planned, in line with the policies and procedure, but also for the purpose that it was intended for, it has reached what? The final beneficiaries. So these are some of the impacts, but most notably, the trust and confidence in the system. We want the people to believe and have trust and confidence in their own system, because that's the most important thing.
How do we improve, of course, the public engagement with the internal audit?
It's engagements or talk shows like this. Yeah. That's why I definitely commend the accountability and transparency talk show like this, because it's very much important. You know, because what we have to understand, we are reaching out to the to every corner of this nation. And QTV, I think, is in the right direction of hosting such shows like this. And this is one of the shows that will definitely increase public engagement or awareness of the role of internal audit, but not only internal audit, but other government functionaries as well, isn't it? Also, sensitization programs is also important. Workshops are important. But more importantly, at the directorate level, we are coming up with magazines, what we call yearly magazines, internal audit functions, at least to sensitize people, make them aware of what we do, how far we have gone, and what are the challenges that we are facing, the progresses we have made when we want to establish trust and confidence in the system, and all those things. So that magazine is also in progress. We are working on that. But definitely shows like this, whether it's on the radio or on the TV, and also sensitization workshop, it definitely helps. What we also do is some of our policies, our programs, activities, or frameworks, we also upload them in the Morphia website, which I would say is a platform for every citizen of the Gambia to access. They can go to the website and access. It's a resourceful website, not only for the Internal Audit Directorate, but all other directorates within the ministry, and not even included to the ministries, because we know that some of these projects and programs are interconnected from ministry to ministry. But the website is a very resourceful platform that people can learn a lot about the Internal Audit Directorate, but not the Internal Audit Directorate only, but also some other institutions as well. So it's very resourceful.
Quite interesting. Quite interesting. I know you must have touched on this during the discussions, but to be specific, what role does the Internal Audit Directorate play in terms of ensuring that government is held accountable, specifically?
Yeah, internal audit, when we say the role internal audit play, is a huge role. Internal audit plays a very big role when it comes to government financial management, or public financial management as we call it. We also do what we call internal control assessment and risk assessment. This risk assessment will help us to identify the key risk in different ministries. Like we have these risk registers that can identify the areas that we should focus. Now, internal audit is even moving to a risk-based system, whereby our concentration will be heavily based on the sites that are on the high-risk areas. Therefore, so that you can see we will ensure there's quality in the public finance management, to make sure that the areas that we should concentrate, we will not leave behind the areas that we're supposed to concentrate on for the matter. But in short, internal audit is playing roles as advisory roles, as Mr. Job has mentioned. We play an advisory role. So many requests are coming to the directorate at the moment because of the trust they have on us, on any advice that they deem necessary. That internal audit should make an impact on this, or should make an input onto this. Then it is brought to the attention of internal audit. Then internal audit will write and give out their advisory service and assurance service as our normal engagements. Some of the activities that we do system audits. Internal audit always, before we set a pace in any ministry, we do what we call system audit, reviewing the entire system of the particular ministry to identify the areas that we should concentrate on, and which controls are not working, which gaps should we close on, and so on and so forth. So internal audit, basically, they are playing a very big role when it comes to public governance, public financial management.
Good. Maybe Job will want to buttress on that.
To add on the accountability aspect on that. Accountability is about taking ownership and responsibility of your actions. And I'm accountable to my actions, I'm accountable to my duties, I'm accountable to my terms of reference set in my employment. Likewise, any other public servant as well. So we play an important role in that, because one of the ways we ensure, or the things we do to ensure that public servants or civil servants are accountable, is by first trying to sensitize them of what their role is. They should understand their role. They should understand their responsibility. If you understand your role and responsibility, then therefore you are accountable to those roles and responsibilities. It's very important that people understand their roles and responsibilities as public servants. And how we help people understand that is through sensitization workshops. We have held so many sensitization workshops for accountants, for procurement officers, for vote controllers, and other stakeholders, even including the CSOs. So it's very important that people understand their roles and responsibilities, and them to make them know that they are accountable for their roles and responsibilities. And if you know your roles and responsibilities and accountable for it, then to gain that public trust and confidence that we were talking about is the transparency aspect. Yeah, you have to be transparent. You have to be very show integrity and honesty in what you do, because that's what's going to earn you the trust and confidence that we are talking about. If I were to do something and I don't want people to see me doing that, probably then what I'm doing is not in line with procedures. Yeah, but if I'm doing it in plain broad daylight, in line with procedures, in line with policies, and I've been very transparent or very honest in my dealings, then therefore people will have trust and confidence in me. But if that's not the case, then there is another issue. But that's the accountability aspect. We want people to know their roles and responsibilities so that they will know that they are accountable for their positions, they will know they are accountable for their actions, they will know they take ownership of their responsibility as well. And this is done through sensitization. And things like this, can also, help people know more of their responsibilities, and responsibilities and duties as well.
Oh, probably some of those who are watching this show would be interested to engage the internal audit on one way or the other, and they will of course want to know how do they do this. If I want to engage the internal audit as a citizen, or probably I need some answers from the internal audit. What are the channels? What are the communication channels? How can they reach to the office when it comes to, of course, addresses, emails, and other things from the website?
Yeah, before I come to the communication channels, you raised a very important topic regarding the impact of internal audit on people's lives. Which we deliberated, in detail. But there's one aspect definitely I also wanted to, this is all about the transparency and people to know what internal audit does on the ground. As part of making sure that policies and rules are followed, as part of making sure that there's trust and confidence in the system also, I think it's important for people to know that, during the past couple of years, internal audit have saved the government of the Gambia. They have saved public funds that, if not intervened, or was not intervened by the internal audit, would have just gone down the drain like that. And we're talking of, in 2019, this was to the tune of about $78 million. Yes. In 2020, also 2019, we're talking of to the tune of millions of dollars that have been saved. We have all these figures been reported in our quarterly report to the Internal Audit Committee, and I believe it's important for people to know that definitely the internal audit is on their service and is working, day and night to make sure that public funds, public resources are definitely used economically, and then for the purpose that they are meant for, and not just, for just some few individuals, to the expense of the whole nation. These are reports that we will upload in the Minister of Finance website. That's why I say that people can definitely use, that website as a platform. Is very resourceful, and they will see all these reports being uploaded when it comes to the savings made by the Directorate of Internal Audit and other interventions that we are also doing in other areas as well. But it's important for the public, for the citizenry to know that the internal audit is making this much savings for the government of the Gambia, which could have just gone down the drain, but because of the internal audit intervention, those monies or funds can be used into other projects that is useful to the population.
Maybe Rob, quickly before you come to sharing the information and all the contact details of the directorate, it will interest the viewers also to know what are the plans ahead, strategic plans of the internal audit. What do you have in plans in the coming years in terms of making that place better?
Excellent. The plans are numerous, but very specific, because we are guided by our strategic plan. And once we are done with the rollout, which we have covered, 100% to all ministries and their affiliated MDS, then we are, if we are to look into the 2021 appropriation bill, there is a section in the speech that says about the collaboration and coordination of internal audit with other agencies, established agencies, which we are working on that, because we want to have a coordinated internal audit function in place in the government of the Gambia. And that being said, right now, the internal audit units in all ministries, because we don't have a very matured system, a system that is embedded with controls to the point whereby you need little human interference. That's why we are engaged in pre-voucher auditing and all those things. So in the future, what we are planning, even those posted internal auditors who are doing pre-voucher auditing, they will not be engaged on post-auditing, because that's what we call the self-review threat, because they cannot be reviewing the payment vouchers and also come and audit the procurement process and reviewing the same payment vouchers that they have provided assurance. So therefore, the objectivity of that assurance is questioned. So we are working towards having whereby the Director of Internal Audit Headquarters will be responsible for all post audits, and then because we don't have a strong control system or environment in the system, then they will be going, they will continue to do the pre-voucher auditing. But when it comes to the post-voucher auditing, it's something that will be handled in the near future by the head office of the Directorate of Internal Auditing. And something that we have really been doing that we did not mention here is about the enterprise risk management. And I think it's also important for viewers to know that internal audit is on their service to give them the assurance that public funds and resources have been used economically and efficiently. It's important for them to know that for the first time in the history of the Gambia, the Directorate of Internal Audit has led the establishment and the designing of what? Enterprise risk management policy and framework. And this was in 2018. It used to happen in the public sector, but never in the private sector, but never in the public sector. But with the help of the Commonwealth Secretariat Peace and Governance Division, we were able to at least design the ERM framework and policy and get it approved. So we have that document in place. And we are also able to successfully pilot 5 key ministries on ERM, and then it was successfully piloted and then roll out to extra key 6 key ministries as well. But because of the coming of the pandemic in late 2019, 2020, we couldn't continue the rolling out, because what we did was we were trying to concentrate and prioritize our resources and time into activities relating to the pandemic. Also, risk also is relating to the pandemic, but we were prioritizing our activities and resources on those areas. I believe it's important for viewers to know that, okay, we have also taken that giant step in making sure that ERM is embedded in all government strategic decision and operational decisions, government-wide. Yeah, and this includes, when I say government-wide, even at the public enterprises, because right now we have in the PFM reform agenda that we submitted to also include the state-owned enterprises into the ERM formulation policies and framework to those SOEs as well. So we are working with them to make sure that at least there's a drive to have ERM established in every SOE, because not all SOEs have it here right now. GRA, I know GRA have established what they call their enterprise risk management, but other than GRA, not many other institutions or SOEs have it. So the Director of Internal Audit is also leading that drive. But definitely we have to commend the Commonwealth Secretariat, the Peace and Governance Division, who really help in the designing of the policy and framework, and then the piloting of those, and then the rollout, subsequent rollout. But there's still more time needed to roll out to other ministries and departments and to the SOE levels as well, and down to the local government authorities, because it's all part of the PFM reform agenda.
Yeah. Maybe before I just come back to Mr. Cham, just to wrap up, because we just have a little over 3 minutes to go. You could take the opportunity and wrap up, and of course as well, share the office information.
Yeah.
Like email address, address, email, website, and probably numbers if possible.
Exactly. I think it's very important. But it's important to know that the Directorate of Internal Audit have moved office. We were stationed in Banjul, but we have moved office in 2020. Now we are at Bijula. Bijula, just behind the Ministry of Higher Education. That is the junction directly opposite to the Atlas Petrol Station. It's a sandy road, especially at this time of the season, but it's just 4 blocks of the main highway. Just 4 blocks of the main highway, there's a signboard there, Directorate of Internal Audit, pointing about, it's 100 meters of the road, and you'll see the sign there, Directorate of Internal Audit on the left. It's a building that we are occupying. And also to tell viewers that we were renting in Banjul, but we believe that to save public funds and government resources, we arrange to have at least, to move outside, and where we are located right now is a rent-free. So we are not using public funds to rent an office or whatsoever. It's a rent-free accommodation for the Directorate, and we are advocating that every other ministries, department, or agency that are renting, they should look forward to having their own place, whereby we will be saving millions of dollars in renting for government premises. Yeah, or government
maybe you can
well.
take the
so
advantage.
It's very important.
Take the advantage and wrap up also.
Yeah. Okay, just to say a very big thank you to RII, also our parent minister, Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, but also to our Director General, who is a strong advocate of public finance management reform. I think he's very well known in that area. He's a financial specialist and also a CIA qualified. So definitely his profile speaks a lot for him. And then We say a very big thank you to him for leading the team. I think he's really transforming internal auditing when it comes to in the public sector for the first time in the history of the Gambia. He's doing all what he can to capacitate the department, encourage staff to stay, but also he needs the help and support of other partners as well, especially the Minister of Finance, and turning this directorate into an agency so that he can have the opportunity to retain the required staff that he needs. Once that is done, you see a bigger difference from the difference that we are
quite
seeing
interesting,
right now.
Mr.
And the contact numbers and the email address.
Maybe you do that quickly.
Okay, the contact numbers and the email address. Still now, our telephone landline is not changed from Banjul. We are in the Combos now, but to reach the Director General Internal Audit is on 32,081 or 765-8734. To reach me, you can also get me on 769-1744 or 370-9677. Bashiri will give his contact details. For the website, we are still using the MOFE website.
Unfortunately, we don't have time. We will wrap up because this is a time-bound program. So we are saying goodbye to our viewers until we come their way in our next show. Bye-bye.